Hey, this is Christopher McCore from Wholeness Geeks, and welcome to Meditation Happy Hour, which happens every Friday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, where I share meditations, processes, and perspectives, both traditional and modern. Today, I want to talk about expression versus consideration. This topic came up recently when my brother uh, Jeff was visiting from New Jersey with his wife and stepson, and so I got a chance to spend some time with him and them, and I noticed that um, Jeff has he's able to juggle being himself and considering other people well, and he has blind spots, but he basically has like there's some kind of formula there for him, and I think he does it successfully in his life, including in his relationship, his marriage, and also in his job. And so I brought the topic up, and I was talking with him and his wife Crystal and his stepson Anthony about it, and I sort of assimilated some ideas about it, and that's what I want to share with you. Um, so I think this is something that uh, we all are faced in our lives is how do we be ourselves and yet consider other people, consider the world. Um, how do we navigate self and other, and the reason this is particularly applicable to meditation happy hours, because you've heard me talk before about the divine humanship, and how we are human. That word human is the hue is Egyptian for divine, and man is of course man or mammal, the mammals that we are, and there's like this, we're a hybrid, we're kind of like split, and in our current stage of evolution we tend to be um, sort of if there's an equation, and on one side there's divinity, on the other side there's um, you know our mammalship. We're heavily weighted on this side, on the mammalship side, and we don't recognize, we don't believe, uh, we're just like, this is our reality, and this other stuff, maybe we've heard about it. It's kind of woo woo, and it's really not something to take stock in, you know. So that's kind of how this topic relates, spiritually, metaphysically. Um, and for me, the reason this is particularly up for me is because of two practices that, one which I've been doing very devotedly since the end of last year, and another which has sprung up recently. And they're kind of like opposites, they're polar opposites. There's a polarity between them. The practice, the one that I've been doing for a while since the end of last year, is what I call soul kernel, which is the way, and I've talked about this before on Meditation Happy Hour. I'll just refer to it here, and if you want to know more about, go back and listen to the other videos. But it's how I have found, it's the way that I have found to anchor my soul in my body. Okay, so there's that technique, and this is something that I use in daily life, like many hours during the day. It's like sort of my main modality. And then the other, which kind of came up recently, and I realized that, the need in my gestalt, I realized the need for this, which I call namaste, which, the true meaning of namaste, is that I bow to the divinity in you. In other words, it's a practice. It's not just a word, a greeting. It's a practice of finding that divine humanship in yourself and creating a resonance that wakes other people up to that. When we do that for each other, we're supporting, we're indoctrinating, really. Um, it's a new stage in our evolution, and we're indoctrinating each other into this new way of uh, being, this way that's built in, it's inherent, but it's dormant. It's undiscovered at this point in time. And this, of course, if you've listened before to me, this refers to Kalki, which is the new avatar. And once again, another word which, in its true meaning, is an advanced being who comes to Earth to teach the rest of humanity, what they're capable of. And in the past, avatars have been single people. There's Jesus and Buddha and um, Yogananda, and you can just there's dozens you could name. Um, but they're single people, and the difference with Kalki, the new avatar, is that it's not a single person. It's actually all of us. We are the collective avatar. We have to become a species, and we have to move without losing our individuality, our ability to choose. We have to choose the collective, to go beyond our own operating systems to the collective operating system. So that's kind of why expression and consideration are so important, so poignant in terms of what it represents. Um, and I've been struggling with this. I think other people struggled with this. I struggled with this before I had two modalities that are actually anchoring this polarity in my life. But now it's particularly up, and I have this sense that there's uh, an idea that comes from Carl Jung, that if you have a polarity and you hold the polarity, you don't try to like side with one or the other, you actually hold it. Um, Something is birthed in between. There's like a new consciousness that gets birthed, and I think in this case, what's being birthed is right action in the world. Um, that that's it's a combination of being yourself and also considering the rest of life. Um, so what I'd like to do, I'm going to talk more, in general about this, but right now I'd like to do like I usually do on meditation happy hour, is spend some time, just a little bit of time meditating, actually trying out these modalities. And what's different today is I want to try each of those modalities with you. And we'll just spend like a little over a minute on each one. So I want to start with Soul Kernel, and actually I think, like I said, if you're completely new to this, then I really recommend you go back and listen, because I'm just gonna I'm not going to do an in-depth instruction here. I'm just going to refer. Um, I've done soul kernel before, and I've done namaste before, but I'm going to I've done soul kernel a lot more. And but the kind of the treat today is that I'm there's it's developed a little more, and I'm going to share that new development. Okay, so what is soul kernel? So the technique is the dantian, which is physical center of the body, 3 fingers below and 3 fingers in. So it's somewhere like back by the sacrum. Okay, so that's the location in the body. Now we're going to sort of anchor our attention there with what I call pulse. Now, the most obvious example of pulse in the body is the heart beating. The most uh, um, what's the word? The some some people, maybe a lot of people, can you ask them, can you feel your heart beating? And they go, no, I can't do that. Um, there is a place in where, which is close to the heart. Um, I'm gonna here move my screen. So it's right here on me. So this is my sternum, and the bone, and here's where the bone ends, and then there's this soft place. That's called the xiphoid process. So if I put my fingers there, I can actually feel my pulse right there. And in fact, if I take off my shirt and stand in front of a mirror, I can actually see the pulse there. Anyway, that might be a way for you to get in touch with your pulse. But we're like breathing, like breath, or like even like sensation. If you use either of those as a meditation object, you find that you can find your breath anywhere in your body, even outside your body. The same with sensation. Well, it's the same with pulse. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the pulse down to the dantian, and so we're anchoring the pulse in the dantian. Okay, so we're feeling the pulse down there. All right, so that's 2 parts. The soul kernel actually has 6 parts now, and that's the second part. The third part is a little bit of a leap, but it's the 6-pointed star, the interlacing triangles, the seal of Solomon, the Star of David. You've seen it, many places. There's a triangle facing up, and then there's a triangle facing down, and the one facing up is actually the one facing down symbolizes involution. In other words, spirit moving into matter. The one facing up is evolution, which is matter going back to spirit. And it's the blending, the balance of those two forces, major forces in life, create heaven on earth. Heaven is the evolutionary force, and earth is the involutionary force. So what we're doing is we're taking that star down to the dantian with the pulse, and we're going to entrain our attention using the pulse as a driver. We're using, like, in other words, we're only moving according to the pulse. And what we're doing is this 6-pointed star is what's called a yantra, right? You've heard the word mantra. Mantra is a repeating sound. This is a repeating visual, and the repeating are the sides of these interlacing triangles, right? So you have the bottom, so you have the bottom, the upward facing triangle. We're starting at the bottom of that. So you go the bottom, the right side, the left side, and this will be a reverse view. Let's see, that's right. No, should be the same for you. And then you have the downward facing, so you do the base of the downward facing, and then the right side and the left side. And so you're moving each pulse, you're moving around the sides of the triangle. That's down at the dantian. Okay, so that's the third part. The fourth part is that You can do this with any mantra, but any mantra that has 6 syllables. But we're going to use the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, which basically means the whole universe is found inside of yourself. Okay, so we're doing that entrainment with the pulse. We're going Om Mani Padme Hum, and that just repeats, right? So that's those are the 4 steps that I have been following for months now. And what I have added just recently is is the atlas. Okay, the atlas is basically the tongue on the roof of the mouth, right? And this is a meditation sort of auxiliary technique. And what it does is it connects the head with the body. And that's basically what it does. So we're adding that, right? But now that's the 5th element. Now the 6th element is what I call what the who. Okay, so I've been meditating over 50 years, and most meditation is like a focusing on something, whether it be in really simple terms, the breath or sensation or pulse or the 6-pointed star or a location, the dantian, the heart, the atlas. But at some point, if you meditate for a while, at some point you realize that, oh, I can take this thing that I developed for looking and focusing on something, I can turn it around and face it towards who is looking, right? And when you do that, when I do that, I realize that there's not like a static, like, oh, this is who I am. There's not a who. It actually opens up into infinity. If you just keep doing it, it opens up into infinity, and it's more like a what. It's like the whole universe is what's looking. And this is a process. You may flash, you might get a flash on this, but or you may have to work at it even just to get a sense of it. But this is what I call what the who. So what we're doing here is that the the 4 first steps of soul kernel are becoming the way that I actually, let me just kind of preface this with the way that I practice the pure what the who is that I focus on my breathing, and then when that becomes kind of a continuous thing, I take my attention with the breathing as sort of like the foundation, and I look at who is looking, right? So that's like very simple form. Well, in this sort of advanced or advanced form of soul kernel, we're using the 4 steps, the 4 first steps as like the foundation, as the breathing. It's like we're substituting in a more complex foundation, but it's still a foundation, and we're sort of creating a connection to that with the atlas. And then what we're doing is we're looking at who is looking. So we're looking at who is looking through the soul kernel. And that's the meditation that I want to do right now. And we're going to do it for 1 minute and 11 seconds. And then I'll come back and we're going to do the Namaste meditation next. So let's go ahead and begin. Okay, back from the, we'll just call it cell kernel 6 because it has six steps. Uh, so from uh, two things I wrote down uh, to share with you. One is you probably saw me kind of like doing some convulsive kind of thing. It's called that jolting. I call it jolting, and it's what how I experience it is that when there's like new consciousness coming into the body, the body is like it's downloading that and it's trying to integrate that, and so there's this kind of jolting uh, activity that happens. The other thing that I wrote down is to explain why you might ask why do you have such a complex foundation from which you're looking at what the who? Um, and it's a very good question. Um, and the answer is that I'll explain it this way. So you may have heard or even you may be familiar with Japanese tea ceremony. So it's a ritual, and it's very elaborate, and it's like there's all these very specific ways of doing things, and um, so with the way I understand Japanese tea ceremony and the person who practices it is that at some point, like I said, it's very elaborate, it's complex, and at some point the person it's like all that ceremony just kind of goes under belt. It becomes unconscious. It goes into the unconscious, and they don't have to think about it anymore, right? And then their mind becomes free to um, explore what I would call the caboodle, right? Of kit and the kit and the caboodle. It's like the ceremony is the kit, and then it's like the metacognition or the the consciousness that ensues uh, is like the caboodle, and the thing that I've learned, and I've known this for decades, is that the more complex the kit, the more complex the kit, the more sophisticated or refined will be the caboodle. In other words, it'll be if the kit is simple, there'll be like a simple uh, metacognition, or um, it, it's it's kind of like the tea ceremony is like it's a way that God or the universe can express itself in the world of creation. And the more complex that foundation, the more refined or articulate will be the expression, the divine expression. So that's kind of the why of this foundation being complex. I mean, it's complex because that's what presented itself to me, and it's so it's like there's a way of enlightenment, a path of enlightenment, which is this, in a way, you just kind of like throw yourself at the absolute. And the thing is that when you do that, you have to come back and integrate it, right? And so this approach is more like I'm working on the integration as I'm moving towards the absolute, so that when I meet the absolute, there'll already be a vehicle for that expression. There'll already be a channel for that energy, for that thing, that consciousness, that um, experience to come through and express itself in actual concrete human life. Okay, so the next meditation that we're going to do is what I call Namaste. Now, Namaste is a combination. It kind of stacks on top of soul kernel, not all of soul kernel, but it will be stacking on the basic 4 steps. But then what's going to be different is we're going to add in what I call ISA, and ISA is an acronym for Infinite Sensate Spine Absolute. All right, so I'll explain that to you. Um, so, uh, so the spine, we have a spine, that goes, and most people think that the spine is like yay long. It's like up to our head, and it's down to the base of the spine. But in numerous spiritual traditions, the spine actually goes infinitely up and infinitely down, almost like we have a dragon tail, or and we actually, human beings are a connection between heaven and earth, right? We are. It's almost like the infinite spine is the train, and the body, the human body, is like a train station. It's like the train just stops at the train station. It keeps going, in both directions. So that's the infinite spine part of it. Like I was referring to before, there's like 3 body cycles that you can focus on as meditation objects. One is breath, and it's the most common, and then sensation is another, which is not as common but still somewhat common. It's you find it a lot in Buddhist Vipassana techniques. But then there's sort of a subset of the sensation, which is pulsation. It's like it's a sensation, but it's a particular sensation. But the sensation part of it is the one that I've, like with the Dantian, we're using the pulse to kind of like anchor our awareness. Well, in this infinite sensate spine, we're using the sensation to anchor our awareness. And like I said, with breath or with pulse, you can actually feel sensation out, both anywhere in the body and outside the body. So that's the infinite sensate spine. And then what we're connecting to, we're going into infinity. And I kind of think of the absolute or the sort of the end of infinity, as the black hole at the center of the universe, right? Which is black. So there's like this kind of luminous darkness that is, the sensation as it's moving through this infinite spine. So that's Isa. And by the way, Isa is one of the names that Jesus was referred to by. So we have Isa, and then we have. So we're adding these 2 elements in. We're adding in Isa, right? We have the 4. We have the Dantian, the pulse, the 6-pointed star, the Om Mani Padme Hum, and then we're adding in Isa. Now, what we're going to do here is the next element, we're going to sort of trade out the Dantian for the way I think about it, it's a bigger Dantian. Okay, the bigger Dantian is the core of the earth. So if you think about that, it's like you've heard the term, that we're meditating on your navel. Well, the navel or the Dantian, which is close. If instead of meditating on your navel, you meditate on the core of the earth, then you become like this giant body, and the core of the earth is the Dantian, and the earth is like your whole abdomen, and then you extend out, into space above and below. So it's like this giant body, and this image came from a book called Time, Space, Knowledge by Tarthan Tulku. But you could think of it that way. So we're trading out we're sort of, trading out the dantian for the core of the earth. And so we still have the pulse. Now the pulse is down in the core of the earth, and we still have the six-pointed star, but now, because we have the Isa, this infinite sensate spine, this heaven element, what we're doing is we're taking that star, which it was on this kind of plane. Now we're turning it, right? We're flattening it, and now it's going to hoop around the infinite sensate spine, right? So now we're going, instead of going like Om Mani Padme Hum, we're going Om Mani Padme Hum, right? And it's hooping around the spine, and it brings into practice a very profound American Indian, but it's found in other places in the world, principle, which is called the hoop and the tree. So the star is like the hoop, and the tree is like the infinite sensate spine, right? So we're actually but we're anchored to the core of the earth. So you can see that this meditation, goes from something fairly individual and personal to something much bigger, and so that's the meditation that we hoop the six-pointed star around the infinite sensate spine. We're feeling the sensation of the spine, but we're still driving that hooping with the pulse, and that's anchored down in the core of the earth. So that's the meditation. So we're going to do that for 1 minute and 11 seconds, and then we'll come back. So here we go. Let me write down just a note. Okay, so you saw lots of jolting in me with that. Obviously, it's much broader in terms of consciousness. So there's more expanded consciousness coming into the body, and so more jolting. You might kind of go, all right, well, so I'm hooping around the infinites, but where do I do that? I mean, it's an infinite spine. Well, it's a moving location. In other words, it can be down at the core of the earth, and it can move up to various places in your body and go out. So it's kind of a roving location of that hooping that's going on, but it stays clearly the star and the pulse and the spine. It stays, with the spine. And what and you might find, first of all, there's if you find you go, you kind of like drift off of that, it's fine. You just you just recognize it and call it and label it thinking, and then just come back to the technique. But that drifting off, that it's like it's kind of like we're drifting off into space, into maybe something like pure awareness, or just a memory, or discursive thinking. It's okay, just label it thinking. But if you really hold true to the pulse driving, right, you might have to wait. It's just like, okay, where's the pulse? Oh, there it is. And as you're waiting, space, it's like you become aware of all the space around this. So allow that to happen. It doesn't have to be this like, I got to keep my attention, right? It's like there's a certain amount of that just to stay focused, but there's also, like I said, if you really surrender to the pulse as the driver, then it becomes there's a space that enters this practice. Okay, so I guess I want to speak to the dichotomy of this, of these ideas, of this, the juxtaposition of these two meditations, and this idea of expression, this force of expression and consideration. Uh, it is a polarity, but what we're approaching here is the complete human being. Um, Divine, in a way, the divine human. It's like we're sort of pitting these two practices, the namaste and the soul kernel. And so the namaste is sort of like the divine, and the soul kernel is sort of like the individual. We're pitting them. And you might ask, well, when do I do what? Well, and I've kind of struggled with that myself. And I think it's as simple as that when you're by yourself, you do soul kernel, And of course it's this, you might need to do just the four steps until that becomes anchored, and then you can maybe do this soul kernel 6. But then when you're with people, when you're obviously, in a social space sharing, and then, maybe that's on Zoom too, then you do namaste. When you're interacting with human beings, you do namaste. And which one you do with your pets, I haven't figured that out yet, but maybe you will, and you can let me know about that, and I'll tell you how you can, we can be in touch at the end of this video. Uh, so, but what we're exploring here is the individual versus the collective, right? Which is a very important part of this. Is the hump, the hurdle that we have to get over as a species. In order to become a species, we've got to realize our collectivity, in a real foundational, practical way. We're so the now like by doing this namaste uh, practice, or even by connecting with the Gaia core, we're sort of pulling ourselves forward. It's like that might not be something that people normally just kind of like, oh yeah, I think I'll meditate on the core of the earth. It's like a new idea. It's like, what would happen if we all started, putting our attention on the core of the earth? So in a sense, we're kind of pulling ourselves forward. But when you pull yourself forward, it doesn't mean that I mean, maybe for some, I think in some rare cases, it could mean like you just go forward and it's like, there you are, you're ready, ready for that leap forward. But I think in most cases, when you pull yourself forward, then you've got to like pull what you were carrying, like where you were, you got to like pull that forward too. So there's this integration process. and it is a process, right? It's in process. We're in the process of embodying the absolute, especially with this idea of the Isa, we're embodying the absolute. So that's I mentioned before that, the uh, actually I may not have that, this what we're dealing with this polarity. There's a process part of it, and there's a product part of it, um, and it's kind of like the namaste is kind of like the process part of it. It's like, how do we be together? And the soul kernel is more like the product part of it. It's like, well, what do I do as an individual? What do I do? Like, what's my job? What do I create? And but in this pulling forward and this process of integration, there's the process. But like, what are we moving towards? And I think what we're moving towards is creating heaven on earth. That's the product. The product is heaven on earth, which actually involves the process of it's like, it's not just the buildings and the roads and the technology. It's how we have transformed as human beings. What are we feeling? What are our thoughts? What is the consciousness of this species that lives in heaven on earth and has created heaven on earth? And can we be can we the people like you and me, the people who are like interested in at this point, can we create a contingent of people, a critical mass, to actually change the consciousness of all humanity? It's like the 100th monkey effect. When there's a certain amount of a species that creates a new way of being or doing things, it just at some point it just kind of spreads through the whole species, regardless of location and time. And that's Rupert Sheldrake. Is a what is he's a scientist, sort of an yeah, let's just call him a scientist. And he talked about this decades ago, but he calls it the morphogenetic field of a species. It's like when you're or like when scientists are making a new new synthetic chemical, the first time is very difficult, but once they've created it once, then it gets easier and easier with each repetition, because there's a morphogenetic field that gets created around that. And how do geese know how to migrate? They just naturally like do this together. It's because they're tapping in to this instinctual knowledge. You could think of it knowledge, or like it's just this pattern of being and doing that's been established, and then you just follow that. And in the end, what are we doing here? Well, we're in this process of becoming divine humans, and as the product of heaven and earth gets created, what's happening is that we're assuming our wholeness as conscious entities. So that's it for today. This is Christopher McClure from Wholeness Geeks, and this has been about expression versus consideration, and two meditations or modalities that sort of anchor those two things in. One is for the expression part of it is soul kernel, and namaste for the consideration part of it. This you can join in order to like get more involved and find out more, and even share your own ideas, thoughts, and even meditations. You can join the Wholeness Geek Facebook group. You can join the Welcome to the Shift Show Facebook group, and you can join the Gaia Core Facebook group. And I will put a chart in. I do most of my ideas I organize through what I call ancient Enneagram solutions. It's using the Enneagram to organize ideas. I'll put a chart of that in those groups along with this video. So thanks for listening. This is Christopher McClure. This has been Meditation Happy Hour, and thanks for viewing.